Sukwu is a classic overworked dad, a slick soul fund manager who lives on spreadsheets and conference calls, and whose relationship with his little girl, Suan, is mostly measured in late-night texts and hurried breakfasts. He's the kind of dad who tries to buy time with presents, and when Suan asks to visit her mother in Busan for her birthday, he agrees more out of guilt than generosity. That sets the whole film in motion. Father and daughter, forced together on a train ride that's supposed to be short, safe, and ordinary and isn't, not by a long shot. They get on the KTX with a motley group of other passengers who'll matter a lot more than their seat assignments suggest. There's Sangwa, a burly, no-nonsense cop on his way to Busan to meet his pregnant wife, calm and quietly tough, a high school baseball team doing the typical loud, dumb teenage thing, a stoic old man who keeps to himself, and a wealthy, self-centered executive named Jansuk who treats the world like a series of inconveniences and demands. It's a good cross-section of humanity, and it makes for immediate, personal stakes when things go south. The outbreak starts fast and small. A visibly ill woman collapses at a rest stop and is loaded onto the train. We get the classic horror escalation, someone bites someone else, and in an instant, the rules of the world change. The infection spreads not through slow, elaborate science but through panic and unchecked movement, which is scarier because it's so believable. One person panics, then the next, and the train, a metal tube that isolates people together, becomes a pressure cooker. Sukwu's first instincts are to protect Suan, yes, but also to find a way back to normal life, which makes him borderline selfish at first. He's the everyman who's so used to solving problems with money and negotiation that he hasn't yet learned how to handle pure, chaotic danger. The real tension of the film isn't a generic survive the zombies trope, it's a close, cramped human drama. The group tries the sensible things, lock the doors, bar the windows, barricade themselves in a car and hope the infected can't get in. But trains have corridors, and people make desperate choices. Yansuk, almost a cartoon of greed and entitlement, hoards supplies, tries to bribe his way to safety, and selfishly abandons others at the first sign of trouble. It's ugly and infuriating, and the movie makes the payoff here feel earned. His cowardice has consequences, and the film doesn't let him off the hook. On the other side is Sangwa, who is basically the film's moral center in physical form. He's loud and blunt and willing to fight, but his fiercest instinct is to protect the vulnerable, his pregnant wife and, as the story progresses, the little girl beside him. He's not cute about it. He's simple and real and suddenly heroic because he has to be. Sukwu and Sangwa are foils. Sukwu's cleverness and inner selfishness are replaced by Sangwa's uncomplicated bravery. Their relationship evolves into partnership as they move from car to car, trying to make it toward Busan. They get off at stations thinking help will be waiting, and each time it's increasingly clear that the infection is everywhere. A train platform that should be an organized safe space becomes a slaughterhouse. Soldiers show up with vague assurances, quarantine, checkpoints, evacuation, and those systems either collapse or lie. One of the film's cruelest moments is how bureaucratic protocols and human selfishness fail people when the stakes are survival, and that failure forces the group to depend on each other more than on any official rescue. What the film is brilliant at is building tension with geography. Cars, tunnels, a subway station, the gullies between trains. Each transition is a gamble. People are trapped between moving trains, pinned in stairwells, running across platforms lined with the desperate or the dead. There are suspenseful set pieces where choices have to be made in seconds: who to save, when to leave someone behind, when to open a door. Sukwu's arc is all about those choices. He starts by choosing his own comfort, then small sacrifices, and finally a full, heartbreaking, redemption-level decision. This isn't an overnight change. It's slow, messy, and believable because it's pushed by the repeated failure of social order. When the world around you collapses, who are you really? The movie asks that a lot. Along the way, individual stories thread through the chaos. The high school baseball kids bring both humor and tragedy. Their bravado becomes heartbreakingly futile against the epidemic's certainty. Small acts of kindness, sharing food, covering a child's eyes, holding a hand while someone's afraid, are contrasted with the worst of human nature, the guy who betrays everyone to save himself, the panicked crowds that crush and trample. That mix keeps the emotional stakes high. You find yourself rooting for folks you barely met minutes before. The film earns those attachments. There are a few major beats that stand out for intensity and emotion. One is the train tunnel sequence where the group has to run across roofs, crawling through cars, and improvise weapons and defenses. Another is the scene where they try to get help at a supposedly safe station only to find there's nothing but the infected and a thin sheen of military-level incompetence. And the smaller, quieter beats are just as sharp: Suan's childlike optimism in the face of horror, Sukwu's ashamed realization that he's failed as a dad, and little, human moments like sharing scraps of food or cleaning a wound, things that remind you these aren't nameless victims, they're people with stories. Sangwa's arc includes a critical, brutal sacrifice. He's the kind of character you immediately trust to do the right thing and then dread to lose. His physicality and courage save lives but cost him dearly. The film doesn't shy away from the cost of fighting for others. Sangwa's choices are loud and physical, and the movie gives those scenes weight. Similarly, Yansuk's arc is a cautionary tale about selfishness. When you hoard survival as a commodity, survival tends to leave you holding the bill. The film treats his downfall as inevitable because his earlier choices make it so. Suk-woo's transformation culminates in one of the film's most gutting moments. He has to confront the very real possibility of losing Soo-won to the infection, and the way he responds shows how far he's come from that distracted, career-first father. He moves from bargaining and strategy to pure sacrifice. You can feel him choose love over self-preservation. That change is what makes the final act work emotionally. It's not just spectacle, it's character redemption. The father-daughter bond, which was frayed and awkward at the start, becomes the heart of everything. The movie's final hours are tense and relentless. The group navigates the last stretch toward Busan, where everyone expects safety but finds a city transformed. The military presence is both an answer and a question. It's not guaranteed safety. In those last sequences, the film strips everything down to essentials: who we love, who we protect, and who's left to carry the memory of what happened. The emotional core hits hardest when personal sacrifice meets the thin, cruel randomness of survival. People you hoped would make it don't, and the ones who do are marked by loss. That bittersweet feeling, relief mixed with ruin, is the film's lasting tone. Without spoiling every twist for someone who might watch it for the first time, the ending gives both closure and melancholy. Suk-woo's arc finds a definitive, tragic resolution, one that completes his journey from selfishness to selflessness in a true, sacrificial way. Soo-won's survival is the emotional payoff. She represents both the literal and moral future. The possibility that human goodness survives even when systems fail. The final images are small and raw rather than triumphant. You leave the movie holding both hope and grief. Train to Busan works because it's not only about zombies, it's about people under pressure. The horror is immediate and physical, but the real story is how everyday folks react when every rule of modern life is pulled out from under them. Its pacing is brisk. The action sequences are visceral, you really feel the claustrophobia of a train, and the character work grounds the spectacle so you care about the casualties. It's a brutal, compassionate film, and it manages to be both thrilling and heart-wrenching at the same time. If you're watching for thrills, it delivers. If you're watching for heart, it's got that too. Bring tissues, maybe a mask if you're sensitive to gore, and be prepared to root for a dad who finally figures out what matters. There's a lot of sadness, a lot of loss, but also little slivers of grace, handholds in the dark that make the ride feel like something more than a horror flick. In the end, it's a story about what we owe to each other when the world goes bad, and it doesn't pretend the answer is easy.